I'm joined by Robert Andrews, UK editor of the website Paid Content, which examines the digital media business, and here in the studio, Kieran Norris, head of social media at Mindshare, a global networking agency for media companies, of which Rupert Murdoch's News Corp is a customer. Do you think many people would change their behaviour, switch search engine over news? I mean, news is not used to being a great driver of commercial decisions.
No, I mean, I think it's very interesting. I'm not sure whether necessarily thousands of people or millions of people will change their behaviour because of one newspaper's actions. But of course, what's interesting for Murdoch is not whether or not enough people change, but whether what Microsoft are willing to pay is enough to make up for the difference that he feels he's currently losing out on, or potentially is making in the advertising revenue at the moment.
Because you're going to have to buy everything if you're, if you're Microsoft and you want to buy, if you like, a competitive place in the search. Well, you're going to have to buy all the content.
Well, I mean, Mr. Murdoch himself said last week that if he felt that if Microsoft wanted to do this, they would have to pay for all of it, and it would leave them with no profits. So, Mr. Murdoch, he's a very business-savvy man. He's made more business in his lifetime than I've had hot dinners. So I think if he would have done the numbers, the question is, have the people at Microsoft?
Robert Andrews, do you think this makes business sense? I mean, Microsoft buying content to try and force people to use its search engine?
It certainly makes business sense for Microsoft's new search engine, Bing. Whether it makes sense for the newspapers who Bing is negotiating with is another question. Google is super dominant in the UK. Something like 9 out of 10 of every web searches are carried out via Google. For Bing, it's only something like 4 in every 100. So the publishers actually need Google, and we think what's happening right now is that the search engines are negotiating with the newspapers to figure out how to value content, and it'll be interesting to see who wins.
Because Google point out that they are working with publishers too to find ways of making money from articles, so that everything isn't free in the future.
They certainly are. Google makes a big pitch to the newspapers and offers them a lot of advertising services in return for their content. The newspapers are struggling at the moment to make money from those ads, however. The decision for them is, do they take a big lump sum payment from the likes of Microsoft, or do they stick it out and hope that the advertising economy will turn up again?
Kieran Norris, I mean, what would happen to the advertising? Because presumably websites suppose you're the Times website and Microsoft have paid you to be searched through Bing. Presumably you're still going to run advertising.
Well, this is another question that, again, I would imagine they've done the numbers on. I mean, another option that's been looked at, of course, is the idea of micropayments and actually charging the consumer to have access to the content. And certainly what the people at the Times have said there is that they feel that people who are willing to pay for the content are a better customer for the advertisers, and therefore will actually be worth higher values and there'll be a better yield. So I think the idea that he's going to put all of his sort of eggs in one basket, so to speak, is perhaps slightly premature.
And how sort of much is this about a grudge between Microsoft and Google, and Microsoft trying to get back in on the action?
I don't think any of this is grudge. I don't think the shareholders allow sort of grudges. I think we saw with the sort of when Microsoft tried to buy Yahoo last year, and Yahoo resisted kind of out of almost for ideological reasons, and now they're having to go back cap in hand, and the price is much lower. So,
but there is a grudge between Murdoch and Google, because he's constantly having a go at them.
I don't think there's any grudge between Murdoch and Google. I mean, Mr. Murdoch was quite happy.
He's described as parasites.
Well, but he was also quite happy to take $500 million off them several years ago to provide advertising on MySpace. I think it's a bargaining position. I think I think a lot of people in the industry realise that something needs to happen, and what they're looking for Mr. Murdoch is kind of trying to lead the charge and hoping, I think, that other people will follow him.
I mean, Robert Andrews, ultimately, is it going to be ordinary web users who lose out? I mean, most people haven't heard of Bing, I would imagine, and if you suddenly stop finding that you've got access to key pieces of information that you used to get, you might not know where to find them.
It could be the consumers that lose out. I don't think anyone wants a situation where particular search engines have exclusive deals with particular publishers. We might be back to the bad old days as in digital music, where you couldn't use tracks downloaded from Apple's iTunes store on your particular music player device. Now you can with MP3, but I don't think the newspaper business should repeat those mistakes.
But do you think in general, having talked a great deal about openness on the internet, we're now moving in the other direction?
We could very well end up with a fragmented landscape if the kinds of talks we're hearing about today actually come to pass. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion yet. I agree with Kieran. I think there's a lot of negotiating going on right now, and ultimately the newspapers will need to realise that they still need Google.
And Kieran Norris, I mean, is this something that will eventually spread way beyond news? I mean, we talked about sort of music being, an important thing on the internet, but I mean, presumably, in theory, this applies to every piece of content.
Well, I mean, this is the whole problem we faced. I mean, again, I think the interesting thing is that the anniversary that's been overlooked this year because of sort of Tiananmen Square and the Berlin Wall is it's 20 years since the internet was invented. So we've only had 20 years to invent new business models for industries that have been going for hundreds of years. And I think the argument is still yet to be decided. I think sort of MySpace Music and Spotify, and they're all trying to find the same answer. How do we get people to pay for content?
And just very briefly in a word, who do you think is going to win, Microsoft or Google?
Google.
And the same question to you, Robert. Microsoft or Google, who'll win?
I think everyone will win because I don't think we'll end up with the exclusive deal situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much indeed, both of you, for joining us.